Hi, welcome to CCTV, Channel 17, live at 525, the Preservation Burlington Show. Preservation Burlington's is a nonprofit 501c3 organization whose mission is to preserve and protect the historic architecture and livability of Burlington through education and advocacy. We have a heavy education show tonight.
We have an awesome education show.
It's going to be pretty,
I'm really excited to dive into this material
right
today.
So before we do, though, it's again, like usual, fall is very, very busy, so we have a lot of stuff coming up. I know the Art Hop is September.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure Greenmount, people should just go to our website, right? There's a Greenmount Cemetery tour in October.
Because we don't remember dates at all, but we have lots of walking tours coming up in this weather, in this season.
And October is also our...
Yes, so we are doing our annual awards event. We're renaming it, we're rebranding it. It's going to be a preservation celebration meetup. We haven't settled on a name yet.
I was just going to call it Devin's thing, since he's the driving force behind it. And
it's a Preservation Burlington thing.
Oh, right.
He is just
the driving force behind it.
The driving force behind it, exactly. We're going to have Bob Blanchard come and speak this year. He was supposed to speak last year and was not able to do that. So he's coming. We've got the awards.
Yeah, the awards. We're going to have the UVM Historic Preservation grad students present their projects.
Yes.
It's going to be a whole evening. We cater it.
Yes.
Every year, and we're aiming for some consistency now, so that we'll do it every October, and we'll have a regular
I'm really
plan.
looking forward to it. It's going to be a fabulous program.
Yeah, so that's all fun. That's coming up. I was reading in the daily 7 days thing, and Paula Routley was writing all about her interns and the 7 days interns this year, and it got me thinking this morning that we have a wonderful intern at Preservation Burlington.
Good segue.
Well, I mean, it's been, for me personally, it's been a really good intern year. Wanamaker Restoration had an intern. I had interns from Connecticut College at Shelburne Museum.
Fabulous.
And with our guest,
let's go there.
Isabel Vivanco, who is from Burlington. I know your dad, and he wrote the book on bicycles, right?
He did.
But you're not in Burlington. You're going to school where?
I go to school at Smith College in Western Massachusetts.
Western Mass. Okay.
But
cool.
Burlington always has my heart.
So. Well,
it kind of has that way of doing it, right?
Yeah.
So what are you studying at Smith?
I study anthropology and landscape studies. So under landscape studies, historic preservation is kind of part of that.
Yeah, a big part of that. I mean, with the cathedral's landscape, and I know that there's a couple of landscape architects in Chittenden County that are specifically work on historic properties and planning and documenting and that sort of thing. So planning and documenting historic properties. So thank you for being our intern.
It was a pleasure. I had so much fun, and it was fun to learn about what you guys do this summer too.
It must have been really interesting too to learn so much more about your hometown too.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So tell us exactly what you we titled this Preservation, Recreation, Protest, and Celebration. I'm reading this without my glasses. A brief history of Burlington Park. So tell us a little bit about the project, how you came to it.
It's a long title, but I had the idea to study parks in Burlington, the history of parks. I'm interested in how people interact with the landscapes around them. And growing up in Burlington, I went to parks all the time. And I wanted to make a place-based curriculum for elementary and middle schoolers, really like a chance to get out of the classroom, see Burlington, learn about its history. And as I learned, the history of Burlington's parks is the history of Burlington. They're as gathering places. They are where people celebrate, protest, all these really important civic things.
Right. Yeah, our civic and cultural bonds all come together and happen in parks and festivals and
everything.
Yeah, the farmers market happens in parks or
the cemeteries were parks.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that was really interesting.
Yeah. So that was a really cool topic. So you just. Well, it relates to your curriculum. So how do you, what was your beginning? I'm getting caught up here because you really leaned heavy into the education aspect of what we do, which is great, something that we can share.
Do you have teaching on your radar, or why did you pick this specific aspect of it?
I've spent a lot of time working with kids, so it felt kind of natural to do something that is sort of related to education, but maybe not where it's me directly working with kids. Yeah.
Great.
Great topic. How did you dive into it? Like, what was
where'd
your
you start?
process?
I started by, a lot of the work I did was looking through old newspaper archives, because Vermont has digitized a lot of newspapers. That was really easy to do. I just went online and I searched public parks in the Burlington newspapers, and I just started with that. And so at the beginning of the summer, it was a lot of like looking through old newspapers, finding old maps, and UVM has a great like digital special collections like online presence. So I found a lot of stuff on there, and I got to go in person to special collections.
Isn't that a great
And
place?
Yeah, that was really, really cool.
Did you go to Champlain's special collection?
I did not, but I did find they have a bunch of stuff online too. So this was kind of like I got to dive in, but not super thoroughly as like a proper historian might.
Oh, don't sell yourself short. So, like, you were doing this specifically to create a curriculum for kids,
Yeah.
right? You weren't writing a National Register nomination or any of
book
that
per
stuff.
se.
Or yet. You can always go
Yet.
back, right? Yeah. You should write a book. But yeah, so you started with newspapers, and I do that a lot too for genealogy and house histories, and I know it can be a huge rabbit hole, right? So how did you how did you come out of the rabbit hole, and how did you know where to go next?
That was definitely a challenge for myself this summer. I would find the articles related to parks, and then I would see all the celebrations, or I'd find an article next to the park article about something else that had happened, and yes, that was definitely a challenge. And then I would have to redirect my energy, either focus more on the curriculum part or like completely change directions, like find a different park to start researching. But those rabbit holes were kind of fun to go down.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
So tell us about some of the stuff you found, some juicy things you didn't know, the history of the parks. Like, which was our first park?
City Hall Park was Burlington's first park. I have a picture here. It was originally called Courthouse Square, and you can see in this photo it was not actually a square, which is kind of funny. It was originally like, this photo makes it look like a circle, but on maps it looked like an oval. And then it wasn't until the 1870s when they curbed it, made it rectangular, and banned carriages going through. Before then, there was a lot of like public outrage because it had become like a sheep pasture, and people were just using it as a cut through and not like a actual public common. And so that was interesting to learn about. It was first sort of as a designated space in the 1790s when Burlington first like made their first maps of the city. And then Battery Park was the second park after it was a military base during the War of 1812.
Yeah, they just got a bronze plaque not too long ago. Diana Carlisle's research into the glass factory that was up there.
Yeah.
But the owners of the glass factory donated that land in perpetuity to be a park. I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool. I didn't know the history of that surrounding area either. And it turns out I think it was donated to the city in 1840, and like 13 years later, a local women's group raised money to have the park properly landscaped. It was called like a ladies' fair.
I love it. Just the ladies to get it done.
Yeah, totally.
I love it. So we've got City Hall Park, Battery Park. How many parks did you actually inventory?
Burlington has like over 35 parks, I think, and urban wilds.
Wow.
And I did not go in depth into all of them. I've primarily focused on City Hall Park, Ethan Allen Park, and Battery Park. Those are kind of the big three and the early three. And then there was another influx of parks in the like 1920s, more like smaller neighborhood parks like Callahan and Roosevelt and Smalley Park. And that was around the time that playgrounds were becoming a thing. Like people started to have like a moral health crisis. They were worried that kids were not strong enough or healthy enough, and it was too dangerous to play in the streets, and so
Well, it kind of was.
yeah, exactly.
There were horses and carriages and rocks.
There's that,
and,
but
yeah,
they should see
totally.
them on their cell phones now.
Yeah.
You mentioned Roosevelt Park. Is that the little pocket park? No, which is that? There's a little triangle park just over here somewhere.
Yeah, there's sort of two. There's, I think, on Winooski, it's called Little Park. It's named after this couple who like tended it for years. And then there's Dewey Park, which is right in front of the Integrated Arts Academy.
Yes,
and
that's what I was
that is
thinking.
interesting because that was actually Burlington's third park in the 1880s, after City Hall Park and Battery Park. It, I guess, became the city's, and it's random because it's really small.
Yeah, it's teeny weeny.
Yeah.
But it's great.
That's funny. They must have somehow fallen into the ownership of the piece of land, and just it's so small that maybe they couldn't develop it or resell it or something, or
Yeah.
I don't
I'm
know.
glad there's green space there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
So keep going. What else did you find?
Well, on the trend of like playgrounds and more like moral issues, one thing that I found in newspaper articles at the time that I thought was really funny was in this kind of push for playgrounds, they had a whole bunch of city meetings, and to one meeting they brought a local draft official. This was in 1918 during World War I, and his argument was like, I've had to send home all of these unfit men, and if they had playgrounds, they would be strong enough to go to war.
Wow.
And so that was a huge kind of final
The expert
push.
witness saying this is why
Exactly.
we need
Yeah.
this, because the war effort.
Yeah.
I would have been
So-
like, no playground here. I don't
Yeah.
like going to war.
yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So, when I think of playground, I think of monkey bars, jungle gym. What did early playgrounds have for equipment?
I think they had a lot of those things, a lot of slides. I think slides especially were early, especially metal slides.
Yeah,
Those
with
are-
little bolts on the side to catch
Yeah.
your shorts and stuff.
Yeah.
Until the sun could bake and blister.
Yeah,
your-
super
your
hot.
bum.
The back of your legs get
And-
blistered.
I think seesaws. Let me pull this up quickly. I have a good photo at Ethan Allen Park. I have this up here now. There used to be this legendary double slide.
Wow.
I don't know if you can see that, and just like how high up it goes.
Yeah.
It's like practically like halfway up one of those huge trees, and there's that huge drop at the bottom.
Rickety,
so-
no helmet.
Yeah, it looks like a 3-foot drop.
Exactly.
Wow.
But the kids go 6 feet out, so it's a gradual drop, and when you look at it that
Yeah.
way.
Is that up by was that at the bottom of Ethan Allen Park?
I think so, yeah. I think kind of like in the background is more towards like Ethan Allen Parkway and North Ave.
That's fabulous. What else are we seeing in this picture?
Well, yeah, where's Smalley Park? That name's familiar to me.
Smalley Park is on St. Paul Street, between like Spruce Street and Maple Street. It's a small
Okay.
park.
Okay.
And that was donated to the city in 1920 by the mayor at the time. His wife. His wife's family owned the property, and they decided to give it over for a public park. And the city people played a lot of baseball there. That was a huge baseball park. Yeah.
So it wasn't named Smalley because it's smallish or too small for a baseball game.
No, I think it's a name, which is not as fun, but
Right.
And then the other photo was South Park. Tell us about
Yes.
that photo.
South Park was what Callahan Park is called today.
Okay.
And that became a park in 1924, and it was originally Burlington High School's home field for football and baseball. So here in this photo, we have a football game happening,
A high school football game.
a high school football game. Yeah.
Well, the high school was probably at Edmonds at that point, right? Wasn't
Yeah.
Edmonds the high school? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah, and interestingly, Burlington used to have some professional baseball leagues, and they would also play at Callahan and Roosevelt. In 1930, for one season, Burlington hosted an all-black baseball team, and they played some like major league teams from New York at Callahan Park. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
How about any women's baseball teams?
No, but I did find an article about a baseball game between the junior high school girls and the high school girls. And I thought it was interesting that it was baseball and not softball. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
that was
super-
like in the 1920s. So
Awesome.
yeah.
So how did you come to figuring out how to structure the curriculum? Tell us a little bit about that process and how you developed it and what it actually is.
Yeah, I was thinking
Yeah.
outline. You know,
Yes,
like you're,
I have-
you're
I
getting
have
all
an
this
outline.
information. How did you create your outline? Or
I know that I knew that I wanted to do something with mapping, like something to actually get kids into the parks. And part of it was to share a little bit about like how to do historical research. This summer was as much me stumbling along trying to figure this out as like actually like doing the research. And I figured like kids like are capable of doing that kind of thing too in a slightly like watered down way instead of just throwing them out there.
Yeah.
And so I have some mapping activities both like in class where they can sort of like situate themselves in Burlington and then like going to a park. Like we have parks all over the city and all of them are within walking distance of schools.
And remind me what age group we're doing?
This is for like 4th through 8th grade, so
Okay.
like late elementary and middle school. And then I thought of like the things that I found most interesting, which was looking at photos and looking at historic maps and reading newspaper articles. So I kind of structured around those 3 things, the maps, the articles, and the photos, and then tried to figure out what are some good engaging ways to show those to kids.
I love that, so that they're going to be accustomed to. There's something flying around here.
I'm going cross-eyed because there's a mosquito in front of me.
They're going to be introduced to research materials and archives, and be able to figure out how to look for them and find them and what to do with them. And I had a question and it's gone. So
Well, those are all 3 of those things are the things that make history come alive, or make it, you know, like you just said, it makes it more interesting. You know,
Yeah.
dates and numbers and names, not so much. But
yep.
the nice thing about articles is you're reading a story, and it's sort
Yeah.
of, you know, I mean, it's like a novel, a historic novel. Those little articles, you know.
Yeah,
if you
totally.
find out.
Making it real makes it more interesting, right? So when we're taught history in school and it's that big textbook and it's all unrelatable and it's, you know, old white men in wigs, you just
Right.
Totally.
Memorize the dates. Memorize the dates.
Yeah.
check
That's
out.
not
But
fun.
when it's here and it's at home and you're out there and you're walking it, smelling it, breathing it, looking at it, it's really cool. I would imagine too, like I love historic maps, and when you can like look and see like there's my house and there was, you know, like
Totally.
it's super cool to see the layers on the land.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that kind of like childlike excitement, and I was looking at the maps, and I could see like, oh, my neighborhood didn't even exist in 1830 or whatever, and so I can imagine that's pretty exciting for a kid too.
That's awesome. So, do you have a question?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm thinking about, you know, selfishly Preservation Burlington and how we utilize this information in your program, but that made me think of asking you, where do you go from here with what you've created? How do you disseminate this information and engage with these students?
That is in process right now. I've been sort of sending this out to a bunch of people in the school district, and a lot of them have like really graciously responded. I've offered to share that further with teachers. I shared it with some of my old teachers and people higher up in the school district, and hopefully it will actually get out and be used.
So do you have to go through any kind of like vetting or certification process? Because I know curriculums in schools, there's a lot of
Yeah.
red tape.
As far as I know, no, but
Oh.
I haven't heard anything otherwise, but
A lot of positive feedback
That's
so
awesome.
far.
I would think it's also be great for homeschooling parents to
Yeah.
have for their kids to get out and learn about Burlington history. But if it becomes part of Vermont's school curriculum or Burlington School District, maybe they will.
I mean,
know
homeschooling
nothing.
isn't just watching cartoons and playing with Legos.
No, there's some really cool stuff that goes on. I
I
learned
used to want to be homeschooled. Now
I learned today
totally
about
ruined
a
for
horse
me.
riding program. It was like, I didn't get to
Wow.
ride horses in school. Should have been homeschooled. But anyway. Yes. So what is it, like I'm looking at a slide over your shoulder here. Tell us a little bit about this organization and how you organized it.
Yes, yeah, we have this up here. Starting as like an introductory activity, that's just to give some context, some historical context. I would assume no kid knows about Burlington's history. So that's kind of a way to get things started about thinking about like, okay, what is a park? How do people use parks? And like, who are they made for? And then having like a timeline activity where they can read a little bit about what Burlington has looked like over the years, and just like help ground them for the rest of the other activities. And then the second section has to do with the mapping. So starting with like looking at old maps of Burlington, and then doing like an in-class mental mapping activity, like mental maps of like are how we like spatially ground ourselves and are super important. And so it's a way to help kids just think about like different forms of maps and how kind of subjective maps can be. And then the final mapping activity would be to actually go to a park and do a survey and walk around and see like
With their field notebooks.
Yes, exactly.
Love that.
Yeah, I got to make a field notebook that was really fun to do with different worksheets and stuff for this whole thing. And then the sort of third section is about historical newspapers. So the first is about rules of the park, kind of comparing how people used to use the park. I took like a city ordinance from the 1870s and compare that to today.
Okay.
There used to be a lot of strict rules about using the parks. Like you couldn't step on the grass, you had to stay on the trails, you couldn't bring your horse in the park, like you couldn't put your house ash on the grass or something.
The house ash?
Yes.
As in like from the fire?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. They were very stringent back then.
Yes.
They did have that little red circle with a line in it that just said fun.
Yeah.
We still have that
Yeah, that's right.
to some extent. Okay, cool.
And then I have another newspaper, historic newspaper activity about where the kids can make their own comics. So read a couple of short articles with some snippets and visuals of just like random things that happened in the parks. And so it's a way to like show them like how parks were used and a chance for them to like read more old-timey language and transform it in a fun new way.
So
Right.
they're making the comics?
Yeah,
I love that because like not every kid is a writer, right?
Oh,
And
totally.
they think in
Yeah.
different ways, and like us grown-ups too, same thing. Like, and so if they're all expected to do the same thing, it doesn't set them up for success.
Yeah.
So I love this creative opportunity for them to express their knowledge and their research in that creative way. That's super fun.
right, a non-linear way to sort of absorb the information.
I want to
you
like
know.
go back and be a kid and do this.
I want to go back in time and yell at my teachers for yelling at me for drawing comics in my notebook all the time.
Doodling. Doodling's allowed and encouraged here. I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah, and then the fourth section is about historic photos. So there's like a typical like social studies curriculum tool called See, Think, Wonder, where it's like a structured way to analyze photos. And so that's a good way to start that off. And then I made a photo caption matching activity where kids can I have like a whole selection of photos and then I made up a bunch of captions, and they can they have to really look at
Figure
the
out which
photos
one
and
goes
figure
where.
out what time period it is, where it is, all that fun stuff.
So it's a little analytical thinking and
Yeah.
all kinds of all the senses and
But like a puzzle. you
Yes.
know,
Yeah, exactly.
tricking them into learning.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
exactly it.
making learning fun, because if it's not fun, why do it?
Yeah.
Okay, fabulous.
Yeah, and then the final activity is putting a lot of things together from this whole set of activities. It's just park design. So kids can make their own park in Burlington, think about what they want it to be about. Do they want it to be a skate park or for mountain bikes or for families, and thinking about how they've learned parks have been used in Burlington throughout its history, and then
Bringing back to that
Use-
landscape design idea
Yeah,
about
exactly.
what, I mean, the park a lot of we take parks for granted, really, right? And so
We really
until you
do,
start
yeah.
looking back in the history of them, and you start, or analyzing different ones and that are different, there's a whole effort, as you know, you're in
Yeah.
school for that goes into figuring all that out and designing these spaces for us. It's like it's not just, oh, there's some grass, let's go play ball and see how it works.
I love this, and we were talking with Bob McCullough last month, and he one of his classes that he taught at UVM, which was one of my favorites, two of his classes were my two favorite classes, but it was history on the land, and he would take us out on these field trips, and we would look at things on the land that, you walk out and you take, like you said, you take for granted, you scan, it's like, oh, it's a pile of rocks, or it's a this, or it's a bump, it's a hill, it's a whatever, and he'd be like, no, this is actually the remains of this type of structure or that type of structure. And like, it was super cool. So to have kids then go out into their parks, and their parents too, I think, and like go look at what's there and be able to identify what it might have been or how it came about, and be like, look, Mom, that's a blah, 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 blah. That's gonna make them feel so great. I love that. Have you tested this out on any kids?
I have not yet. No child subjects have been used in this yet, but
We need to find you some.
yeah, I have tested it out on some adults. Some of the photo caption matching, mostly my family. They've been very helpful in this.
Oh, cool.
But I have a bunch of small neighbors, so hopefully.
There you go.
Maybe I
Hey,
can
kids, you want to
recruit
learn
That's
something? You
great.
can't put it that way because
Maybe
they'll say
we could
no.
do like, so how long is this designed to be like sequential and be over the course of like, I don't know, a term or a year, or can teachers like pick and choose? Like, how is it designed to be used?
Hopefully teachers can pick and choose. If they did it all at once, it could be like a 3 to 4 week thing. But I made it purposefully with a lot of flexibility. And if teachers wanted to pull 1 or 2 activities out of the full thing, or I have some extensions for more thorough research for older students. But yeah, it totally depends. I haven't really run it by any proper teachers yet. Karen with Preservation Burlington was super helpful with her feedback.
Proper teacher.
She is a proper teacher, so I guess that's not fair to say, but yeah.
Yeah, you need more than one. So
Yeah.
On to the next one. Karen was the beta test, and now we
Right,
gotta
and
launch
yes,
it into the world.
the components can be
Yeah.
put into other curricula too, as they relate and stuff.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? I mean, is this the end of it, or are you going to expand on this? What's your thoughts
gonna
for
write the
this
book.
project? The
Yeah,
book that
that'll
we
be
talked
my
about
project
earlier.
next summer. For now, this is the end, but with not a hard stop, with open to more research or work on this. Obviously this hasn't been tested, so.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's some evolution to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah,
into
well,
it.
you're
But
to
you've-
go back to your senior year, and you got all these ideas, and who knows what will come out
Yeah.
for you to tackle next.
When do you go back to school?
Saturday, pretty soon. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on and doing the show.
Oh
before
my
you-
gosh,
Instead of
yeah.
staying home and packing for,
pleasure.
for
And,
leaving.
and
I don't
thank
wanna
you
think
for
about that.
doing this for us. I think we were all super excited to A, have an intern, and B, have such a great project that's just going to make such a difference, I think. And
Yeah.
add to our architectural toolkit. Maybe we can dust
Exactly.
that off.
That's what I was thinking about
Yeah.
earlier. How this all segues into the educational stuff that we try to.
And mold this little new generation of preservationists. And
We could do another scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
With specific parts of the curricula that kids
Yeah.
could try to find and look and
I love it.
give something away.
They can bike around Burlington.
Yep.
Go look for the parks.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. With your dad's book and then your curricula and
Yeah, I love it.
I think we're winding down. Isabel, thank you so much for all your work, and it's been really fun hosting your internship. And if you have to come back next year, let us know. We'll figure
We'll make one
something
for
out.
you.
We'll figure something out.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for taking me on. This was
Yeah,
great.
it's
It was
been
awesome.
been fun.
I think we're the winners.
Yeah, I know. And I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to CCTV Live at 525 and our Preservation Burlington show. For more information on Burlington history, our tours and events that we don't know any of the dates for, or to get a marker for your historic house, go to preservationburlington.org, and we'll see you next month.